Hi, and welcome to another episode of This Week in Plymouth. I am your host and your town manager, Derek Brindisi. This afternoon, we have another town official with us today. His name is Doug Pinard. Doug, thanks for joining me this afternoon.
Sure.
So just so folks, I don't think you've been on this show yet, have you?
No.
So, although I've been here for 4+ years, and you've been
Right.
here for how long?
Same, about 4.5.
4.5.
coming
So
up on 5,
you
yeah.
probably got here right before I did.
Yeah.
So Doug was superintendent of our sewer division, and so Doug, you and I, we have a lot of sewer talk to
Yes.
discuss today. So.
Yeah.
But, there's a lot of things that are happening in the community that are related to sewer. And oftentimes, a lot of the work that you guys do in Public Works, folks see it on the street, but they don't really know why we're doing it and what's behind it and what we're trying to accomplish. But before we jump into some of the projects, it would be great if you introduce yourself. We'll talk a little bit about your background, where you came from, some of your experiences.
Sure. Doug Pinard, I'm the wastewater manager for Plymouth. I've been doing wastewater about 25 years. Before that, I did park and recs. I've always been a municipal employee, so I started out with some park and recs, went on from there to highway, which was road work, drainage work, things like that. And then from there, I did get into wastewater, and through all that, I also did snow and ice, which we still do. I'm still involved with here. And started out as maintenance, went through that, continued on and got into running my own treatment plant and collection system, became a chief, and then ultimately came to Plymouth as the chief here, manager of the treatment plant here. I have my grade 7 wastewater license. I have my drinking water license, 2 in treatment as well. A few other certificates and licenses to go along with all that stuff, municipal.
Yeah, and I don't think people realize the licenses that are required, especially from our drinking water operators and our sewer operators. The state requires a lot of licensure and education in order to do the things that you do. So it's really important that you have those licenses. But I do remember, I think one of the first times we met, I was probably on the job just a couple months, and this whole issue of fats, oil, and grease came up. And I know it's not on our agenda to talk about,
Right.
but I think that was the first time I met you, and
Yeah.
we were looking at the fog.
Yep.
This is the acronym, the fog regulations, and doing some work on that. Can you just explain to folks, especially I heard today that there were some business owners that were reflecting back on the change in those regulations, and they were hoping that the town would have engaged them in a back and forth dialogue before those regulations were changed.
So yes, so that was one of the first things that when I came into town that was on the agenda, was to try to improve the collection system, and that was one of them. So we worked with the health department, and we came up with the fats, oil, and grease regulations, and we took into consideration all the businesses in town. We looked at some of the problem areas that not only that we take care of in the sewer department, as far as routine maintenance, as cleaning and stuff like that.
Right.
We looked at all of the collection system. Not only does the fog regulations represent the portion of town that's sewered, but it also affects some of the businesses like in Cedarville and Manamet that are not on sewer, but they have a septic system.
Sure.
So we took all that into consideration, and we wanted to make sure that those fats, oils, and greases are being maintained properly by the businesses, and it's not ending up in a collection system for the town, or even with a septic system, which would cause it like a sanitary sewer overflow.
Sure.
SSO.
Yeah.
So we took a lot of that into consideration, and we looked at some of the problem areas in town, and we wanted to make sure that we started to work towards rectifying that. So we did that. I think it was 2 years ago. We implemented some of those regulations, and we've been working with all the businesses and getting them on board with the new regs.
Yeah.
So part of the new regs is you have to have an external, if you can, an external 2,000-gallon grease trap. But obviously, like with downtown, some of those businesses don't have the capability to put something like that in. So we have a flow-appropriate automatic grease trap. So currently, before the regs came out, they had a passive grease trap, which they would have to have a contractor or a contract with a contractor to come in, professionally clean those passive grease traps. But we were finding that some of those were falling behind. So That's why we implemented the automatic grease trap.
automatic one.
So it's I know it's been tough for some businesses because they had to make this change, but following up with some of them, they're happy with the results, with how much is removed.
And I know we're getting very technical talking about grease traps and sanitary sewer overflows, but I think what folks need to understand is, like, part of what you do, is to look at the sewer collection system and ensure it operates as it's designed, right? So, like, when our restaurants in particular are dumping grease into this collection system that you're referring to, our sewer pipes get clogged, and then what happens is the raw effluent, right, or sewage, raw sewage, right, backs up and then can overflow into the streets, into yards, or every place. So, really, when you think about it, we're trying to protect public health by preventing raw sewage, entering into the public domain. So, that was one. I know that's one project that you guys are actively engaged on to try to protect public health, and to try to prevent those types of sanitary sewer overflows. But another very highly engaged, community engaged project that you had been working on for the last 2 years was the convening of this groundwater discharge committee. And I know you and your boss, Bill Coyle, the DPW director, just presented on this to the select board after it was about a year and a half to 2 years worth of analysis and research. So again, this is really important for people, who are listening at home. Like, what is this groundwater discharge committee, and what was the intention behind it, and what was the end result that came out of these 2 years worth of research and analysis?
Well, I know it was a lot to cover at the select board meeting, and we tried to put a lot of information into a short amount of time. But ultimately, the treatment plant was originally designed and built to have groundwater discharge. But along the way, it was limited for the groundwater discharge, and it was discharged, clean effluent was discharged to the bay. So part of the Citizen Advisory Committee was to look at some of the data that we've collected through testing that we did at the treatment plant, and help us determine if we've done everything that we needed to do to keep this path moving forward, and submit what we called the draft EIR. And it's just another step in a long road to put the town in a position where we could utilize the treatment plant as it was designed, so we can discharge our effluent to those beds at the treatment plant.
And so, we're talking about discharging effluent, right? So so what is that? So, the sewer collection system, the raw sewage gets pumped into the treatment facility. At that point, the solids are taken out. The liquids are then cleaned or disinfected, for lack of a better term, and then has to be discharged, right? So the primary discharge point for that effluent, so that that was once sewage, goes out into the harbor, right, through the outfall, right? So there's a pipe that we dump this effluent to it, and it finds its way, downstream and then dumps into the harbor. But what you're saying is that the treatment plant was originally designed to not dump it into the harbor, but to dump it into the ground, right?
Correct.
And so talk a little bit about, the differences between dumping it into the ground versus what we've been doing the past at least 25 years now. I think the treatment plant was built in the early 2000s, right?
Yes, so it was built in the early 2000s. Right now, there's a pump station on Water Street. We put that flood wall around there, and that is our primary headworks. So we pump raw effluent, the sewage, from there 4 miles to the treatment plant. We process it, like you said, and we clean it, chemicals, whatever we clean it, process it, and then the clean water that leaves there pumps 4 miles back to that same location and discharges it out into the harbor. So what we're trying to do is get it back to the original design, so it discharges into the RIBS, the rapid infiltration beds at the treatment plant. So part of what we're doing now is we're trying to reduce any type of nitrogen impact to the bay, and Not that it's how can I say that? So we're still going to be discharging the same effluent ultimately at this point to the beds, but the concern with groundwater isn't nitrogen. Your nitrogen, you have more of a concern with salt water with nitrogen than you do with groundwater. The bigger concern for the groundwater discharge is the phosphorus.
Sure.
So, but when you would, during the meeting, I mentioned attenuation, meaning how far does that spread?
Right.
So the iron in the soils, the metals in the soil, actually
Bind?
Yes, thank you. Bind the phosphorus in that location. So part of this process with the committee, like you said, is we've had this data, we've done pilots, and we've shown them that data saying, well, it's compiled right at the sand beds. It hasn't migrated any farther than that. So part of that, also with that committee, with many other projects, we have a $2.5 million grant that we are working to put in tertiary filter that would help remove some of that phosphorus.
Okay.
So it's advanced treatment at the treatment plant before we even discharge.
Before you even discharge, you're trying to remove as much phosphorus as possible.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Before we even discharge. But then the beds, as Plymouth is very sandy, so that's almost like an additional filter. So it's going to be binding a lot of the phosphorus will be binding a lot with those soils after the fact. So currently, phosphorus leaving the treatment plant is about 4.5 milligrams per liter. And we're hoping with this new tertiary filter, we can get that down to 0.2. So, I mean, at that point.
So there was a lengthy discussion. You presented this information to the select board, and so the select board. So there were basically two different recommendations, right? The Citizen Advisory Committee, they recommended that the town not discharge into the beds, but they continue to discharge into the harbor. And you just described some of the environmental impacts by doing that, right? And so the department's recommendation to the select board was to continue the path forward to go ahead and discharge using tertiary treatment into the beds.
Well, the current recommendation isn't to start discharge to the beds. That's a permitting agency, DEP, will tell us.
Right.
But the vote that the board took now is just another step in this road to say, here's a draft of all the information that we have thus far for you to review in the MEPA process. And then there's a comment period, which citizens will have time to review that document and make any comments or any concerns that they may have. And then that comes back to the town. We will review that and address those comments and concerns. And then we will have another final draft to submit, which they'll still have another comment period to go through that, and then DEP will come in and step in and review all that and say, this is what we expect if you wanted to do groundwater discharge, this is what we expect in your permit, and these are the limits that you'll have.
Right, so in summary, the select board's vote was just to give the Department of Public Works the approval to go ahead in seeking the approval process, right? So that's really what you're saying. So now we're going to go ahead, we'll apply to DEP, I would imagine, and then at that point there'll be that public comment period. And so I can tell folks at home, like once that public comment period opens up, we will advertise that far and wide. We know that especially folks that live along the river, they're very concerned about this issue.
Absolutely.
So we want them to have an opportunity to voice their concerns, through the public comment period. Right.
Absolutely.
And so we'll continue to talk about that as that evolves. I would imagine, that probably won't take place until sometime, maybe mid to late spring. But we'll communicate that to the community at large. So again, so that's the groundwater discharge committee. And then, I know again, you guys are working on a lot, but there's this comprehensive wastewater management plan that you're working on, which I think started about a year ago. But as far as when we talk about public sewer, I grew up in the city, and so there was no septic systems. Everything was public sewer. So for me, learning about septic systems is new. But you were just saying offline that about 30% or so, maybe a little bit less, is public sewer, and the remaining part of the town is private septic systems. So this comprehensive wastewater management plan is to do what when it comes to looking at the entire system and the community as a whole?
So that plan, it actually encompasses looking at the treatment plant, the 8 publicly owned lift stations, and the collection system, which is the 60 miles of currently that we have. And then also we're looking at town-wide where we might be some problem areas with some of the nitrogen in some of the ponds, and what we might be able to do to address those, whether it be a satellite treatment plant or maybe a collaboration with like a Red Brook or a Pine Hills or something like that. So that's all part of the same project where we're looking at all these different needs of the collection system, the treatment plant, and the lift stations, and it's town-wide. It's not just the users, it's actually the whole town.
Well, can you talk about that? So I don't think we talk enough about the damage, the environmental damage that septic systems create. And if 60+% of our community is on septic, there are some negative environmental impacts. And, there have been a number of folks who attend select board meetings over the last number of years talking about the sole source aquifer and how we have to protect it. And they always talk about gravel removal as a way to protect preventing gravel removal as a way to protect the sole source aquifer. But nobody ever talks about what I think would maybe, in my mind, could be one of the number one threats, and that's private septic systems.
Right. So a lot of the issues you hear about the nitrogen in the ponds of Plymouth and things like that. So your average septic system could yield 35 milligrams per liter of nitrogen. If we could remove that septic system and put in some type of satellite treatment, you would reduce that automatically to around 5 milligrams per liter. So just by doing that would be positive impact for the nitrogen in some of the ponds and surrounding areas.
And that's my vision when going back to the comprehensive wastewater management plan. You touched on 2 of them. Like, is there a way we could partner with Red Brook, for example, right? And because they have a satellite sewer system, collection system. And the question would then become, if we were to partner with them, could we expand on their existing system and start to capture the neighborhoods around Red Brook and take those homes off of septic? Right. So, and the same thing can be said for Pine Hills as well. So, those are the things that I'm hoping that come out of this, because I'm a staunch advocate that the more we can do around limiting the number of septic systems, the more we can do to preserve the environment.
I agree, and that's a great question. And just so you know, I'm not sure if you were aware or not, but we are scheduled actually to come in front of you in the Select Board on March 3rd with an update on this project. We're not quite there yet, but part of this project, like I said, is we've asked to look at some of these, if we were able to partnership with some of these private treatment plants like that.
And one that we haven't mentioned, because we keep talking about the big treatment plant, but we also have another treatment plant that's owned by the town at the airport.
Yep.
And so is there any opportunities there with expansion?
Well, originally we did look at that. The average flow there is 5,000 gallons per day, and it's rated for 25,000 gallons per day, so there is some room for expansion there. We've had discussions with the Airport Commission, and I think that they're looking to expand their own collection system out at the airport, so they can have some more users. But originally we did look at that and part of South Meadow, but I think the Airport Commission would like to expand and utilize that extra flow.
Yeah, well, I think that's something we should continue to engage upon.
Sure.
The sewer. The airport is owned by the town, not the Airport Commission. The sewer system is owned by the town, not the Airport Commission. But if there's opportunities there that we could take advantage of this upgraded sewer treatment plant, then we should do that. Again, you know, I do believe that the more we can do around septic system removal, the better for this community long term. You know, you know, I'm not an expert on the new Title V regulations that were passed or the last few years, but I know that they're having a major impact, a financial impact on the Cape. These like nitrogen reducing septic systems, and so at some point those Title V regulations are going to creep their way across the bridge, and they're going to get to Plymouth. And you know, these systems, from what I'm told, upwards of $50,000. So again, we want to help the homeowners and say, listen, we have a cheaper alternative. Instead of you having to pay for a $50,000 new septic system, you know, maybe you can tie into the public sewer system, right?
Yeah, and to that point, that's why I think I mentioned it at the select board meeting about the groundwater discharge, where I think that the town of Plymouth will be seeing some of those limitations within the next 5 to 10 years, and we need to make sure that we have the capacity at the current treatment plant, so we can do extensions like on Warren Ave or Camelot Drive and things like that to get these areas sewered and reduce some of the nitrogen and utilize the current treatment plant. But again, if that's something that we could sit down with the airport commission, like you said, with the select board, and look at the treatment plant at the airport as well.
Yeah, I would say that before I forget, let's make sure that airport treatment plant is a part of the comprehensive wastewater management analysis.
Yep.
Yeah, so
it is.
That's something that we should definitely take a look at. And then shifting gears, we got about 7 minutes left. Water Street update.
Yes.
So I think we're on take 4, maybe take 3.
Take 3, yes.
Take 3 of the Water Street project. You know, can you give folks an update at home? What's going on Water Street? You see heavy equipment down there again. The road's partially closed. What's happening?
So we're moving along very well. Things are going well and positive. We've finished, well, I shouldn't say we, but Northern has finished driving sheeting for the whole 400 feet that we're looking at. Wells have been drilled for dewatering. We're continuing to wrap that up. We're going to be starting excavating shortly to make that repair. I've been working closely with the businesses down there to keep them. We're trying to keep them apprised of what's going on, and addressing any concerns that they might have, and keep it as smooth as we can, because I understand that there is an impact down there, and for the most part everybody's been cooperative, and we just want to get in, make the repair slow and steady.
And I know we had, when we met with Northern, who's the contractor on this project, you know, we had basically a deadline of completing this last repair by Memorial Day. Do you think that's going to happen?
Oh, you're going to put me on the hot seat. Jeez.
You are under oath.
Yes, just under oath. You're on the hot seat. Things are moving well, and my hope is to be wrapped up by then.
Good. And I know that, you know, I guess, you know, just so folks know that, you know, when we had phase 1 and phase 2 went extremely well, right? No complaints. Everything went well. Phase 1 was the area that we had that settlement in the ground, created a dip in the pipe, which is why we're back to phase 1 again to try to, you know, straighten out that bend, right? And so, so hopefully we straighten out that bend. Northern has been great to work with, and hopefully we can wrap this up, put the street back together, and put this project in our rearview mirror.
Yeah, and be ready for tourist season.
That's right.
That's right.
That's the most important.
Yep.
And so you most recently came to the select board meeting, and you mentioned this GAP 3 grant. What is GAP? What is this all about?
So this was an energy grant that we collaborated with our contract operator, Worthing Curran, an energy grant through DEP to replace some equipment at the treatment plant. So basically, it's a VFD, a variable frequency drive, for a motor that runs a blower. We have 3 basins at the treatment plant. 2 are on variable drives, 1 was not, meaning it's on-off. So it ran at 100% of the time.
Wow.
So it was a lot of energy. So we replaced that drive.
Was it designed like that to run?
Yeah, actually all 3 were like that at one time.
Wow.
So we've reduced a lot of that electrical impact over the years. So this was the last one, and it should save yearly about $37,000 per year.
And how much was the grant?
The grant was 97,000 and change.
So you received a grant for, and how much was the town's contribution?
22,000.
So the town paid $22,000. You just said that you will save $37,000 in energy savings. So just in the first year alone, it's going to pay for itself.
Correct.
And so this utility bill is paid through the enterprise account, right?
Yes.
And so just so folks are aware at home that we have a number of enterprise accounts, sewer being one of them, which basically the revenues that you generate through sewer fees goes into a special account that you can then use for operations. So paying for staff, paying for contractors, and paying for maintenance or capital improvements. So I bring that up because now you'll have $37,000 a year that you're not paying towards utilities that you can put towards another use.
Yes,
right?
correct.
So that's great. That's great. And I think we don't talk enough about the grants that we get and really reduce costs on our ratepayers in this case, in other cases, reduce costs on our taxpayers. So, I mean, Doug, we've covered a lot today, and I know there's probably a lot more we could continue to cover.
Absolutely.
But I think we're running out of time at this point. So I think what I would like to do is, getting back to how we started this conversation around the groundwater discharge committee. When we get closer to the application period, I think you should come back. Maybe we bring some other guests on. We can talk about the process. We can talk about, some of the science behind phosphorus versus nitrogen, so folks at home have an understanding of what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I can certainly do that. I'd be more than welcome to come back and sit with you and talk about that. But I just want people to know that the decision that the board made wasn't to just go to groundwater discharge. I didn't leave that meeting, go to the treatment plant and flip a switch and start discharging.
Yep.
This is just another step in a long process that they voted to move forward. It's a paper.
Right.
Really.
Yeah, they basically gave us approval to submit our application to get approval.
That's it.
So again, we'll keep folks posted on that so they're aware of what we're trying to accomplish in the sewer sphere.
Yeah.
But thank you for coming on.
Yeah, anytime.
I'm sorry it took you 4.5 years to come on the show, but
I was ducking you for a while. I didn't want to come on.
we'll have you on more often than you think. So
oh, great.
I appreciate your time.
No problem.
Everyone at home, if you want to learn more about the Groundwater Discharge Committee, the GAV3 grant, or even the Water Street Update, a lot of these projects are listed on the town website at www.plymouth-ma.gov, or you could always just call Town Hall at 508-747-1620. So thank you for tuning in. Until next time, I am your host and your town manager, Derek Brindisi. Thanks, Doug.
Thanks.